Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Collide Kids podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. I am so glad to have you listening today. Thank you for checking this out, especially if it's your first time. I just want to say welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, be sure to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, I am so excited to share this guest with you today. His name is Donnie Slade. He has been in ministry for over 25 years. He has served on staff as the children and family pastor in Rome, Georgia. He and his wife, Christy, have helped start 3 churches, which gave valuable experience in how to build a ministry from the ground up. Donnie has also been an event director for Kidz Blitz Ministries for over 15 years. He and his wife, Christy, travel all over the United States, sharing the gospel with thousands of families. In June of 2020, he became the president and CEO of Kidz Blitz after Roger Fields, founder of Kidz Blitz, retired. Donnie says becoming the leader over a ministry in the middle of a pandemic does not make sense in the natural, but God makes sense in the supernatural. In the natural, the timing could not have been worse, but it was perfect timing in God's plan. Donnie has a love for the local church and its leadership and wants to partner in ways to see the gospel reach as many families as possible. I am so excited for you guys to hear this conversation with Donnie Slade. Donnie Slade, I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids podcast today.
Hi, Christen. Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. Will you just introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I sure will. My name is Donnie Slade. I live in Rome, Georgia, or just outside of Rome. Grew up here, went to college here, went to seminary, and came back to help start a church. And met my wife in college. We've got 3 kids. Our kids are 29, 27, and 25, and all 3 of them are married. We've got 2 grandbabies and 1 on the way. And so we're excited about that. But I love kids. I love ministry. My wife jokes that no matter where we go, if it's in a restaurant, if it's at Walmart, kids tend to gravitate towards me. If you've ever seen the movie Santa Claus with Tim Allen, when he goes to his kid's soccer game and he's sitting on the bench and all the kids start lining up to talk to him, my wife says that's me. So love kids. My wife has to tell people, I promise he's okay. He's a children's pastor. Kids love him. So love kids. We went to Disney not long ago, and even there, she's like, they must think you're a Disney character because all the kids just keep looking at you and wanting to talk to you. So love kids.
What Disney character do you think you look like that you would have resembled?
Well, my granddaughter, this is no joke. Her name is Sadie Jo, but we can't call her Sadie Jo. She says, I'm Sadie Bell, because she loves Beauty and the Beast, and she calls her daddy the Beast, and she calls me Gaston. So I'm Gaston.
That's great.
But I'm not mean like he is.
Oh, that's good. So tell us about, and you have this ministry for kids, but tell us about your ministry.
Okay, so the ministry that we have is called Kidz Blitz, and we do a couple of different things. We do a kids event, we do a family event, where we call parents and kids out of the office to play games. So if we do Kidz Blitz, it's just for kids. For instance, we do an event for a church every year, Easter, up in Tennessee, and they'll have 25,000 people on their campus that weekend. Yeah, it's crazy. The parents go to the services, and they literally have 4, maybe 5 now, auditoriums. And so the parents will be in 4 of those, and we have the kids in another one. And we'll do 5, 6, 7 events that weekend just for the kids. And so I think that's 1st through 5th grade is who we have. And so we'll call kids up on stage, play games, present the gospel throughout the event. But we do other events like Upward. We do back to school events, VBS opening or closing. Sometimes people just say, hey, we just want to do an event and do a family event. And moms and dads are there. We call them up on stage to play games with their kids. Everybody likes to have fun with their kids. But we do it at church instead of at the bowling alley or the roller rink or, wherever. And we set up this huge set, and we call parents and kids up on stage, play the games, present the gospel. And it's about an hour and a half event. Parents and kids love it. When they leave, they say, when are you coming back? We did an event just this weekend in Florida and had 500 or 600 people there, had over 50 decisions. Wow. And of those were moms and dads. And it was really cool because the way I do the invitation or did this weekend was, had them bow their head, close their eyes. The decision, I would say, everybody look right here at me. If you made a decision, lean over, let mom and dad know. And you see all these kids leaning over, letting their parents know, hey, I just asked Jesus to forgive me my sin. And then I'll say, parents, if you made that decision, let somebody know. And there was a mom who leaned over and told her husband, and her husband just grabbed a hold of her. And so now we know that family will never be the same. And so that's what it's all about. We love it. It's a great time.
That's amazing. What a great story. Well, I love this. I want to hear all about how you got started in Kidz Blitz. But before we do that, because this is a podcast for kids, we always like to start out with a joke. So do you have a joke you want to share with us today?
I got two. An invisible man married an invisible woman. The kids were nothing to look at either. That's bad. The other one was that my wife and I, we watched 3 movies back to back. I was excited. I was the one facing the TV.
I get it. You were back to back. Oh, good.
I won't torture you guys with them.
Those are good. I like that. Movies back to back. All right. Parents are going to have to explain some of those. That's okay. Yeah. That's good. So you told us about Kidz Blitz a little bit. I think it sounds so much fun. Tell us how you got started in this type of ministry.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit earlier. I graduated from college and went off to seminary, and I was there for a year. And we moved back to Rome. God called us back here to help start a church. Never thought I would leave seminary for one until I was done. Never thought I'd move back to Rome ever. Thought I was, moving away and going to, do ministry. Who knew where, but always thought maybe I was going to be a student pastor, maybe a senior pastor. But we came back to Rome, helped start the church. For the first months, we just prayed, just asking God, okay, send the people. We didn't want to start the church without starting in prayer. And that's important no matter what you do. You need to be praying about it. But started the church in October, and there was nobody there to do kids. And so I told the pastor, I said, I'll do the kids to start with. Somebody needs to. And so the first week we started the church, we had over 200 people there, and I think we had over 30 kids. It was crazy. And for the next couple of weeks, I did the kids part. And one Saturday night before church on Sunday, God woke me up in the middle of the night and had me turn to the book of Matthew and just opened it up. And it says, let the little children come to me. Jesus was talking. The disciples were saying, hey, let's get these kids away. He's like, no, let the kids come to me. And God just almost audibly spoke to me and said, I want you to be the children's pastor. And at that time, there wasn't, this was 25 years ago, over 25 years ago. And so I went to my pastor the next morning. I said, hey, I need to talk to you. And he said, I need to talk to you too. And after service, went up to him. He said, hey, I really feel like God's calling you to be our children's pastor. I said, well, that's funny because God already told me that. So as I said, we started the church, and we were there for 10 years and saw God do amazing things. We grew to over 1,200, and children's ministry just was going, blowing and going, and we were seeing people saved left and right. But when you start a church, you also have to have a second job because there's no budget for a children's ministry, and so our children's pastor. And so I was working a secular job, and I would have events come to our church, and one of the events I had come was Kidz Blitz, and had them come, and then started talking to Kidz Blitz on and off, and they eventually asked me to be the Southeast director. And so I would travel, and that became my secular job. Let's say it became my second. And so I got to travel all over the country. I wasn't just the Southeast director. I mean, I was going to California, up to, Connecticut. I mean, I was all over. And the good thing about that was I was able to see what other churches were doing, what worked, what didn't work, what kids loved. I'd go and talk to kids and, hey, what do you love about church? And they'd say, well, the walls look like this, or our teachers do this. Or I talk to parents, and parents would go, our kids love this part of it. And so I'd be able to bring that back to my home church. And that was part of the reason why I really feel like our church grew the way it did, was God enabled us to see things. I've been praying the prayer of Jabez, which is Father Story. And there's more to that prayer, and that's a really cool prayer that parents can teach their kids. There's a really good book out there, the prayer of Jabez. It's real simple. But I prayed that. It's a real easy read that you can read to your kids too. But the prayer of Jabez, I prayed that, and God began to extend our territory to the point where we were all over the country. And so was with Kidz Blitz. When they called to ask me to be the Southeast director, I remember it like it was yesterday, because it was my daughter's 7th birthday. And we were at a little jumping gym place where, they can jump on the trampoline, all that stuff, have the balls, all that stuff. Anyway, and I remember asking my kids, hey, what do y'all think about Dad being able to do this? And my kids were like, Dad, you'd get to share Jesus with thousands of kids all over the country. And I was just like, out of the mouth of babes. And so we really have had the opportunity to do that. We've seen thousands upon thousands of people come to know Jesus. Let's say that was in 2004. And so we're 18 years in. So we've just been able to go all over. I think I've probably driven over 1 million miles, done over 800 events. But back in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, everything shut down. Churches shut down, our events shut down. Kids had to skip school. Kids had an extended vacation.
That's right.
and moms and dads were going, please, can we open schools back up? But, we didn't matter exactly. We had an event at the 1st of March. We had over 40 events canceled. And the guy that started Kidz Blitz, Roger Fields, you could tell he was getting ready to retire. And so he did actually in the middle of 2020, around May, and we took over in June of 2020. So Kidz Blitz is our full-time job. I don't like to say we own Kidz Blitz. I'm responsible for paying bills. And so, Kidz Blitz now, we have 3 teams. We're looking at starting our 4th. And so God's just blessed. So that's kind of the long story of how we got involved with Kidz Blitz, kind of how we are the Kidz Blitz people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that. And I love how it just lines up that way, how God works those things out. When he wants you to do something, he definitely makes it clear. I love that, your pastor told you and you're like, yep, I already know that. So I think that's so good about God, how he confirms things for us, when we have questions or we're not sure, he makes sure that we understand. So that's good. And I love that Kidz Blitz is all about kids having fun and really learning, hearing the gospel in such a fun way. What are some things you do to make it fun? We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
So just some of our games, are we use a jump rope, but it's a heavy jump rope. We do games that kids might play at school or somewhere else, but we have a kind of a twist to it. So like our jump rope game, they have to wear a real funny big hat. They have to wear big flippers on their feet, swim flippers. And they have to use a big heavy jump rope. And so they're trying to get over that jump rope the best they can. They can go forwards or backwards, and they're competing against someone else. So we split the auditorium in half. And one side we call the mosquitoes, and one side we call the jellyfish. And so you have somebody from the mosquitoes competing against somebody from the jellyfish. And, sometimes the kids fall, but they get back up and they don't give up. And that's important in life. We don't give up. And so every one of our games has a spiritual meaning behind it. And so it's just a lot of crowd involvement as well. And we always have people ask us, why do you call us the mosquitoes and the jellyfish? And so we used to do blue and green, but, you go to some places, and if we do an Upward event, I don't know if you're familiar with Upward, but a lot of Upwards, they wear jerseys, and everybody would be wearing blue jerseys. And so it just didn't make sense to have blue and green, because sometimes that was confusing. So we're like, what can we do that won't be confusing? And we started thinking, well, you could call them Bulldogs and Jackets. Well, if you're in Georgia, that would not be good.
That's right.
Or if you're in Alabama, they definitely don't want to hear about the Bulldogs, right? So we thought, well, what names could we come up with? And we're like, well, nobody will ever choose mosquitoes and jellyfish. And so we came up with that, and the kids have fun with it. But for the parents, it was something kind of funny. 3 months after we came up with those names, Zika hit. And you're like, mosquitoes. We're like, oh, man. But we couldn't change it to that. So, when we took over Kidz Blitz, I don't like saying take over, because it can be kind of negative. Is when God, I guess, turned the ministry over to us, I guess is a better way to say that. Right in the middle of a pandemic, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Even though some things don't make sense, if God tells us to do it, we need to do it. And we sometimes we'll see why God told us to do that, and sometimes we won't. We just have to trust Him, and that's what faith is all about. And that's one of the things that we've taught our kids through the years. And even we see our kids now tithing. One of the things that our kids learned at an early age was it's important. It's not ours, it's God's. And so we give back to God what's already His, and we can't outgive Him. And our kids have learned that. It's fun watching them now that they're married, tithing. And then our son, he and his wife that have the two kids, our two grandbabies, even teaching their kids now the importance of giving back to God. So, that's the joy that I get out of children's ministry, and seeing kind of that light bulb go off. And so,
yeah. Why do you think it's so important for you to share the gospel when you go to these events? Because, it's a fun event. It's just something fun you can do with kids. But what's the importance to you about sharing the gospel?
I guess the reason why is the most important thing in the world. It's the good news. And why would we not share the good news? Okay, you probably picked up on it. I'm a huge Georgia fan. Georgia won the national champion. The Braves won the World Series.
Woo.
It's been a great year for Georgia. And I talk about that with friends, and we talk about things that are good. Why would we not talk about the greatest news of all, which is the gospel? We were at a church, and we gave an invitation, and we saw people come to know Jesus. And afterwards, somebody from the church said, it's amazing what happens when you give an invitation. And she went on to tell us that she knows too many churches that they don't. They don't give kids an opportunity, or parents an opportunity, to respond to the gospel. And she made the statement, why even come to church if you're not going to give people a chance to respond to what you talk about? And so our heart behind it, we're very evangelistic. He defeated sin, He defeated death, and He made a way for us to have a relationship with Him again, because our sin separates us from Him. It just is the greatest news of all, and we should be sharing the greatest news of all.
Absolutely. And I love that you have this opportunity for parents and kids to be a part of this. Why is it so important for parents to attend these events for you guys?
We do the kid event, but my favorite is the family event, because you'll have not just moms and dads there with their kids, but you'll have teenagers there. We've seen a lot of teenagers come to know Jesus at these events. It's important for parents to have a relationship with their kids. God has given us that responsibility. The greatest responsibility that we have as parents is to raise our kids in a godly way. The greatest decision any of us will ever make, the greatest decision kids will ever make, is the decision to follow Jesus. And moms and dads need to be a part of that. When I was starting out in ministry, my favorite things was to give an invitation and have kids come and talk to me. And I would get to lead them in a sinner's prayer, or I'd get to lead them to Jesus, And then at the end, I'd get to go downstairs and tell mom and dad, hey, your kid made a decision today. And you could see the excitement in their face, but you could also see that, wow, I wish I would have been there. Mm-hmm. And God spoke to me early on, you're robbing the parents of the greatest gift that they can receive outside of their own salvation, is when their kids come to know Jesus. And so I began to put those two things together. Instead of, if a kid had questions, I wanted mom and dad to be there. Moms and dads, we need to take the responsibility serious. And one of the things I say in our event is, it's not the church's job to raise your kids spiritually. It is our responsibility. The church is here to partner with us, to give us the tools we need. On an average, we have 40 hours a week at the church. Parents have over 3,000 hours a year with their kids. If you take away sleeping and school and all that, who has the biggest influence? When I was in the local church, one of the things I would always tell the parents was, mom and dad, no matter what we think, we are the greatest example for our kids. The question is, are we a positive example? Are we a negative example? And so we want to be that positive example. And so the way we do that is, we've got to spend time with God. We've got to teach our kids what it looks like. I remember growing up, if I went to my grandparents' house, my grandmother, every morning when I would come for breakfast, she was sitting at the table reading her Bible. My grandfather already had his Bible. He was already done with his. He was out, doing something else, but you knew he'd had his quiet time. My parents, the same. My mom is a prayer warrior, up every morning praying for everyone in her family, praying for her coworkers. So my dad is my hero, because my dad taught me what it meant to be a Christ follower. And so I just have a strong heritage. Not everybody has that, but it's never too late to start your own heritage. That's right. And so that's one of the things I want to tell parents is, maybe you didn't grow up in a Christian home, but your kids can, and their kids can, and it's never too late to start.
That's good. That's so true. And even if there are kids that are listening that their family doesn't go to church, or they don't have that heritage, like you said, they can start, and they can find those people in their life, in their communities. Maybe there's a friend at school that you could go to church with. If you're interested in finding a spiritual community, you can find that for sure. But that's so special when the parents get to be a part of that.
I was just talking to a young boy actually yesterday, and he plays baseball, and I said, how'd it go? He said, we didn't do too good. And he said, but I don't care because I didn't play. And I told him, I said, no, it's important that you cheer, even though you lost and you didn't play, you're still a part of that team, and you need to be a leader, and you need to encourage the other players. And he said, well, okay. And I told him, I said, the Bible teaches us that we need to do all things as unto the Lord. So no matter whether you're playing or whether you're not, you need to have a good attitude, and you need to be a leader, and you need to help other people along the way. And so as boys and girls, we do need to tell other people about Jesus as well. Mm-hmm. And do that by finding, like you said, other Christians to hang out with and spend time with.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I love this. And I think it's so cool that you have this ministry that goes all over the country, sharing the gospel and having lots of fun with kids. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to share a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us today?
I do. If you allow me, I will share two memories, if that's okay. One that I like to share is, a not so good story. I was in second grade and I had played in a baseball game, and so I was all excited, even wore my uniform to school that day, got home, didn't do my homework because I was so excited. But I should have done my homework, but played in the game. When I finished the game, we came home, we won. And so went outside to play with my friends, celebrate. And I was riding my bicycle. I wasn't supposed to be because I had not finished my homework. And my dad left the store, and I went outside, and I was riding my bike, and I rode into the middle of the road and got hit by a car. And for the next 6 weeks, I couldn't walk. My leg was messed up, and I'm okay now, but it was a very important lesson that I learned that day. Was a couple of things. Number one, I need to obey my parents, because if I would have obeyed my parents, it wouldn't have happened. And for the next 6 weeks, I would not have been in a bad shape. So needed to obey my parents and do the right things. Because when I obey my parents, I'm also obeying Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So just needed to learn that, hey, when my dad tells me to do something, I do it, and he's not being mean. He's just wanting me to do the best thing. But I guess the second story I'll tell is when I was 6. I remember sitting at that time we had children's church, and Mr. Bruce, and now you've got to remember, this was 44 years ago. I'm 50. So 44 years ago, I remember this like it was yesterday. And I was sitting towards the back of the room, and Mr. Bruce was talking about a relationship with Jesus, and he gave us an opportunity to respond. And at the age of 6, I was one of the younger people in the class. Mr. Bruce said, if you want to ask Jesus to forgive your sins today, if you want to ask him to be Lord of your life, come forward. And so at the age of 6, I got up and walked to the front and talked to Mr. Bruce, and then talked to my parents. We talked to the pastor, and a couple of weeks later, I got baptized, which baptism is not what saved me. It was a relationship with Jesus. Just baptism was letting other people know that I had asked Jesus to come into my life. And so that was the greatest day of my life. It's the day that my eternity changed. And so that's, I guess I told the first story to say, even though I was a Christian, I wasn't perfect. I still made mistakes, but I had to ask for forgiveness and follow up. So, just because we still make mistakes, and we just need to make sure that we own up to them. We ask for forgiveness, and we try not to do those things again.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. I can't believe you got hit by a car.
Hit by a car on my bicycle. So
Man.
Yeah, learn the lesson the hard way. So boys and girls, don't learn the hard way. Listen to your parents, they say.
And look both ways, even when you're on a bike.
That was the other thing. Don't play in the road. I mean, there was a rule broke that day. So, it wasn't one of my better days.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So I think a great lesson we just learned is don't play in the road, kids. I am so glad we got to hear from Donnie Slade today. I just love his ministry and what he's doing. He is so passionate about sharing the gospel. And like he said, the gospel is the greatest news. And so it's so important to share the gospel. I also love that he talked about tithing. He said tithing is just when we realize that what we have is not ours. It belongs to God. And so we give back to him what he gave to us. I think Donnie talked a lot today about having a relationship with Jesus. So if you're interested in that and have questions about that, be sure to talk to your parents or grandparents about this, or find a trusted friend or leader or someone you know who loves God and has a relationship with him. You can also reach out to Donnie's ministry, Kidz Blitz, by going to their website, kidzblitz.com, and kids is spelled with a Z, and learn more about their exciting kids and family events they do around the country. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So I'm excited to introduce you to my friend, Ryan.
Hi, my name is Ryan and I'm going to tell you a joke. Why did the students eat their homework? Because their teacher said that it was a piece of cake.
I love that joke, piece of cake. That was a good one, Ryan. Thank you so much for sharing that today. Hey, kids, if you would like to be on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. If you have a favorite Bible verse or a favorite joke you want to share, you can find information about how to send that to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. Hey, would you like to support the podcast? Here's a few ways you can do that. First, be sure that you subscribe and follow this podcast on social media, and subscribe so that new episodes will automatically load each week into whatever podcast app you're using, and leave a rating and a review. That really helps so much for other people to find out about the show. You can also share this episode with friends and family and tell them why you and your family like to listen. Or you can go by my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the link that says buy me a coffee. It doesn't really buy me a coffee. It's just a way for you to contribute some financial support that would help me a lot. And anytime you think about it, I always appreciate your prayer support as well. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing week. I hope that you find some time to spend with your family and be grateful for all the things that God has done in your life. And I hope that if you would like to make a decision to follow Jesus, that you talk to someone about that today. In case no one has told you, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thank you for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between. And all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids Podcast.